Let's go. Oh yeah, they use this song many times throughout the movie, which I don't know. I think it's a good choice. It's a good song, obviously. Coolio's "Gangster's Paradise." I almost said Amish Paradise there. Whoops. So real quick, I'll just go over the general plot of this movie. So, Michelle Pfeiffer is a teacher, and she is newly divorced. So she was working for her ex-husband's company, but now she has to go back to what she was doing before, which is teaching. And she doesn't have her full. And this is something that I was actually a little confused by because they don't really explain that. She doesn't have her full certification, or at least that's what they make me think at the beginning of the movie. But they still are desperate to give her this job, so they give it to her anyway because the job that Michelle Pfeiffer ends up getting is teaching these underprivileged kids. Some people would call them the troublemakers or whatever. There's lots of movies like this, like Freedom Writers, a little bit like the Robin Williams one, Dead Poet Society. But I think they're all a little bit different. I haven't seen Freedom Writers, but I feel like this one's pretty close to Freedom Writers. Although, it's actually based off of a true story, so I don't think this is. But I did enjoy this movie. It was fun. It was fun to watch. I actually watched it all in one night, and that doesn't usually happen with me for movies that I review. So that right away gives it entertainment value.
Do all those kids reject from hell?
No. The kids with high IQs and low grades.
Yeah, see, it's smart kids, but they don't want to do school. So they need someone to do a different kind of teaching method. Hence Michelle Pfeiffer. Michelle Pfeiffer.
All you gotta do is get their attention.
Oh yeah. And that's how it starts. She's a U.S. Marine, an ex-U.S. Marine, so she knows like combat and stuff. So that's how she gets their attention at first, is by fighting the children. Well, she doesn't fight them, and she makes it clear that she can't touch them. But it's still kind of crazy that she's like showing them a move in class, and of course later on the principal is like, you can't do that. But to her credit, she's just trying to engage the children, trying to teach them in a way that actually speaks to them. So, moving on.
Once a Marine, always a Marine. Most of my students don't even know what a verb is. You want to pass? All you have to do is try.
Let's play a game for it.
Straight 8-ball, call your shots, no slot, best out of 3 games.
And yeah, there's the principal. I think his name's Mr. Grandy or something like that. And he's a good character in a way because I feel like maybe it's cliche, but it definitely works for the story. He's the very by the books, like we should be using the curriculum. We shouldn't be doing all these different teaching methods that Michelle Pfeiffer's doing. But obviously, in the end, Michelle Pfeiffer is correct. And I'm going to talk about what happens in the end, but I'm not going to talk about it yet. But yeah, obviously these kids need a different approach, and that's sort of the point of the film.
Haven't seen you guys in a week. Thought maybe you got lost on your way to class. Wanted to help you find your way back.
My boys don't go to your school no more, and that's gonna be it.
And she's just doing her absolute best to get these kids an education and be a good teacher, but so many things get put in her way throughout the film. And that's sort of like life, right? Like sometimes things just aren't going to go your way, and you keep trying. And you know what? I'm going to talk about it right now. So the ending sort of, it's kind of sad, but I'm not even going to say the exacts of the ending, but I'm just going to say there's lots of things that she can't control. There's bad things that happen, but the bulk of the class is still there, and they still want her to teach. But Michelle Pfeiffer's down on herself because she's not able to help everybody. But you can't always help everybody, and that's a good point and a good message in a way that You just do your best and try to help who you can. Anyway, moving on.
You took him out of school?
Go find yourself some other poor boys to save.
Yeah, she's pissed at Michelle Pfeiffer, but and not for a good reason even. Like she's just trying to teach them fucking important life lessons.
You gotta be crazy to stay here and teach these program classes.
Why do you stay?
Why do I smoke? I'm crazy.
I will not go down underground because somebody tells me that death's coming around.
Because that's the difference between owning your life and being afraid. You mean like a guy's got a gun to your head and he's pulling the trigger and you say, I choose to die?
Yeah, and it starts out they read poems in the class, because it's an English class, but they're reading Bob Dylan to start off, because there's sort of a funny bit where her and the teacher that got her the job are talking, like, who's your favorite poet, she says to the other guy, and he says Dylan, and she assumes it's Dylan Thomas, which is a Welsh poet. I actually didn't know this before watching this movie, but I immediately assumed Dylan. But then she's like, wasn't he Welsh? And he's like, no, Bob Dylan wasn't Welsh. And it's like, oh, Bob Dylan. I thought you meant Dylan Thomas. So it's kind of funny. But then they compare the Dylans, the Dylan Thomas writings to the Bob Dylan writings. And that's an interesting scene. And you can sort of see how the teacher gets their attention and stuff. And I like that.
These kids are so fragile.
You got to rage against the dying of the light.
You promised!
Yeah, but we had to. We couldn't walk around with our heads up no more. You a Marine, you understand. If you don't stand up, you can't walk down the street.
Yeah, and there's a scene where she sort of interferes with the fight, and she starts to realize more so how it is being these kids living in this really tough neighborhood, that they have to stand up for themselves. They have to deal with things that you wouldn't have to deal with in other neighborhoods. So she's learning as well as the kids are learning. So that's another thing I like about it.
Nobody's forcing you to be here. You have a choice. You can stay or you can leave.
You come and live in my neighborhood for 1 week, and then you tell me if you got a choice.
There are a lot of people who live in your neighborhood who choose not to get on that bus.
Like, I feel like a lot of people would say this movie's a little cliche. It's too by the numbers, but I don't know. I think it's okay when a movie has so much heart and the performances are so good, and it does give you some really compelling scenes. So that's why I think that it still works, despite some people giving it that note that it's a little bit too by the numbers.
That is a choice. There are no victims in this classroom.
And obviously Michelle Pfeiffer is just so good. Very good actor. Dangerous Minds. That's right. New music from Coolio. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Leo. Anyway. Let's check out the IMDb page. So 6.5 out of 10. I suppose that's fair. Honestly, I'm going to give it a little higher than that. I liked this movie quite a bit. But let's look at the cast here, see if I recognize anybody. Obviously, Michelle Pfeiffer. We don't need to go into it. So, her friend, this George DeZunza, who plays Hal, her co-worker. Mr. Grandy is this Courtney B. Vance. He's the sort of hard-ass principal playing everything by the rules. And, yeah, we should talk about why he's such an asshole. So, there's nothing wrong with being by the rules, to a certain extent, with going by the rules. But he is just so hard-headed that he will not see it Michelle Pfeiffer's way. And at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, there's this character, Emilio, who is in a conflict with another student, and they're gonna, like, kill each other. And Michelle Pfeiffer goes to him and tries to protect him, brings him into her home, but then Emilio leaves and he's gonna go talk to Mr. Grandy to, solve the problem. But he doesn't knock on the door, so he gets sent away because he doesn't do this thing that Mr. Grandy considers necessary, knocking on the door because it's not polite or whatever. He sends him away, and then he ends up getting killed, and he dies, and it's sad. And Michelle Pfeiffer ends up wanting to leave the school because she's like, oh, all these people that I've tried to help, one of them's dead, some of them just aren't coming back to school. But then they make it so clearly these kids love her, that they've been helped so much by her, they don't want to see her go, and it's sort of a powerful, lovely scene at the end there. But I digress. Moving on past the cast here, let's check out the box office information. I feel like this movie made some fucking money, and it sure did. 23 million budget. That's not even that high for a Michelle Pfeiffer movie, but you know, fair enough. 23 million, and the gross was 179 million. So this movie clearly did well. It's a good job. I liked it. I think the critics just like shat on this super hard, but I liked it. So let's look at the Rotten Tomatoes. I've looked at this before, so I know how bad it is. 33% on the tomato meter. But that's the critics. That's the critics not liking it. But I just don't agree. I think it was very good. It's not perfect. It has some problems, you know. It is a little bit by the numbers, perhaps, but I definitely enjoyed it a lot. And there's like the comedy thrown is actually funny, and all the performances by the kids and everyone are very good. But yeah, 64% like the audience clearly liked it more, so that's cool. That's all we really need to look at with that, I think. So let's bring my head and let's make it bigger for the end of this stream here. Let's bring me up. Boom. All right, so what else to say about this movie? I've talked about the general plot. Michelle Pfeiffer's trying to help these underprivileged kids that just, they're smart, but they just need a little bit different approach. She gets them in with the karate, but then Mr. Grandy's like, you can't do that. You got to stick to the curriculum. She tries to fight the curriculum, but she can't. But the kids love her. And there's a funny scene because at first she's rewarding the kids for doing well in school. So she takes them to an amusement park with roller coasters and whatnot. And they go together. But then Mr. Grandy gets mad and is like, there was no permission slip signed. Like, this isn't allowed. But she played the cards like they went after school, so it's okay. And they invited her, and she said she paid for all of them, so then it's okay. It's not the school paying. I kind of like that because it's like, you know what, yeah, fuck you. You can't tell me what to do if I do it on my own terms and in my own time. So I like that. Some things in this movie, I'm trying to think of like little notes that I can talk about with what, if it makes sense or not. Oh yeah, like what I said earlier, where why don't they make her do, or they don't even show, maybe she does do it off screen, but they don't show that Michelle Pfeiffer does get her certification to teach, because they say she's not even fully certified. So I'm a little bit confused by that. You know, little things like that maybe don't make sense, but for the most part, people's main problem with it is that it is just a little bit too by the numbers. But you know what? I liked it, so I'm gonna give it a rating. Let's end the review. I'm running out of stuff to talk about. But yeah, Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer. I really enjoyed this, honestly. It was an easy watch. It was fun, well made, for the 90s especially. And yeah, I liked the soundtrack, the camaraderie of the students and Michelle Pfeiffer. I'm kind of a sucker for this kind of story, I think, is part of it. But I digress. I'm going to give this 7.8. Actually, that's a little high. Let's give it 7.5. I feel like that's fair. 7.5 out of 10 Dougs. It's not perfect, but it's definitely worth a watch if you've never seen it, like I hadn't. And it's on Disney Plus if you do want to watch it. Dangerous Minds, 7.5 out of 10 Dougs. Okay.